I feel like anyone who's been involved in the coaching industry at one point or another has had this universal experience where you sort of just wake up and you start to recognize a lot of really weird shit that's happening that you've normalized and people in the industry have normalized, only to perhaps later realize like, hey, this isn't actually normal at all. So whether you are currently a coach or you're like me and you are a recovering former business boss babe, this video is for you. Thank you so much to the channel VIP members, as well as those of you in the billionaire tier. Welcome to day 7 of the 12 days of Coachmas. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Okay, so before we get into it, I would love for you to share in the comments one particular behavior that you thought was normal when you were in the coaching industry, only to later realize that maybe it wasn't that normal after all. I'm just curious to see how many of us are on the same page before we get into it. So pause the video and let me know in the comments. For me, there were 3 really obvious ones. The first one, I think is one we've all seen and talked about, is so many coaches' obsessions with bragging about their income. Like my clients in my business currently have absolutely no idea how much money I make in a year. And even if I was in like a sales-based business, my personal revenue shouldn't be the reason someone wants to work with me. Maybe how much revenue I've generated for my clients would be relevant, but for my personal income to be the reason that you want to hire me as your mentor just seems like so backwards. And in no other industry off the internet do I think that we see this. Sure, I might discuss my personal income amongst friends, with my partner, with my family, but that being said, I think that like broadcasting your income or your revenue more specifically across the internet is only something we see in like the girl boss babe business coaching part of the industry. And I mean, as I alluded to, it's really just a way to get clients. Because if I'm a coach and I want to learn how to build a 6-figure coaching business, I'm going to want to hire the girl who has an alleged 6-figure coaching business, right? I mean, if I tell you that my business made $500,000, you're probably going to be curious. You're going to want to know how I did it, and you're going to be much more likely to buy my program where I'm promising to teach you how to do the exact same thing. Okay, the second thing that I thought of as normal that isn't actually normal that I think ties well into the idea of like bragging about how much money you're making is the normalization of spending a ton of money and then going on the internet and bragging about spending all of that money. I mean, I'll pop up on the screen here just a handful of the examples that we've seen recently. Generally speaking, I think any of us who have been involved in the coaching industry at some point or another have probably experienced the feeling of pressure to invest in ourselves and invest in our businesses in order to
be successful.
Which I've said so many times, to a degree, that's true in any business. You need to invest in order to be able to make money. I have expenses in my own business right now that I have to spend money on every month in order to continue to grow my business. However, what I think has happened in coaching specifically is that the concept of operational costs, you know, those things you have to spend money on in order to be able to run your business, have since been conflated with spending exorbitant amounts of money on coaching or mentorship as a necessary expense in your business when it's not a necessary expense in your business, allegedly, in my opinion. I mean, I said this in day 3 of Coachmas, but high expenses out does not ever mean a guaranteed high amount of income coming in, especially if you're selling something that people don't actually want to buy. No matter how much money you spend on coaching, if there's no market for the thing that you're selling, you're never going to get a return on that investment. Not to mention the fact that coaching itself has become so expensive is like a whole thing that has also been normalized that's not actually normal, but we'll leave that off the list for today. I actually shared this in my story the other day about how I got scammed, but my first experience getting into coaching was getting on a sales call with one coach who wanted to charge me $8,000 and then finding a coach that was only charging $4,500 and thinking,
oh my God, it's on sale, I'm getting such a great deal.
Because my perception of what was normal pricing had already been skewed by that point. And so maybe some of you who spent longer investing in the industry than I did can attest to this, but I would speculate that the more time and money you spend investing in coaches, the more normal it starts to feel that you just keep spending more and more money. Please let me know in the comments. Okay, the last thing that I've recognized as being normal, but it's not actually normal once you're not in the industry or you kind of realize it's happening, is the pressure that is created and felt and experienced to essentially idolize your coach or whoever is like the highest paid top of the food chain mentor. And you're also never supposed to question anything that they say or do. Now, I've talked in other videos about the narcissistic traits that I believe a lot of coaches tend to exhibit. And I've discussed the parallels between coaching and cults, particularly when it comes to an obsession around the leader or worshiping a particular individual. You can watch that video here. But I thought I would speak from my own personal experience of being afraid to speak out against something that my coach was saying or doing out of fear of not only their disapproval, but also of fear of exile from the community as a whole. When you're in one of these coaching containers, as they like to call them, I feel as though there's almost this sense that you're not supposed to question anything that's happening. And obviously in like a healthy, proper coaching relationship, that's not true, but I'm not talking about a healthy coaching relationship here, okay? Because let's be clear here, a lot of these business boss, girl, babe, coaches aren't actually coaching at all. I talked about that in my video where I shared my story in the coaching industry over here. Rather, I think what a lot of these people are doing is, or would be, more aligned with consulting or mentoring or just simply telling people what to do. And they just call it coaching. And so as a result of that, when they do give you advice or guidance or they tell you what to do and it doesn't necessarily align with the thing that you're trying to create or it feels kind of icky, you're left to feel like you are the problem. And in my experience, you often don't want to say anything because you look around and all of your peers are like nodding along as if we should just listen to what they say and believe it. And you're afraid that if you do say something, you're going to get booted out of the program. I mean, we heard that in this particular interview right here. In my experience, I know it wasn't until like years after I had left the mentorship environment that one of my former peers actually reached out to me on Instagram, and the two of us were kind of talking about our experience in the past. And at that point, she was like, yeah, that was really weird. I don't know why she was telling us to do that. But at the time, both of us had been afraid to confront her or to say anything because we thought we were the problem and that it was our attitude that was the reason we weren't getting the results that we had thought we would. How messed up is that? I really think that a healthy relationship, whether it's in like a paid coaching relationship or just like any relationship in your life, should have the opportunity for healthy back and forth discourse. And anytime you're put into a situation where maybe you both have differing opinions, that shouldn't just automatically be labeled as hateful. Like if I'm paying you my money, I should be able to tell you when I don't necessarily agree with something you're telling me so that we can talk about it and get past it. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're working with an actual coach, the goal should be for you to be able to achieve this thing that you want, not necessarily the goal that your coach has for you. And I mean, I think that's all linked to the conversation around like many coaches not really understanding what coaching even is and just calling it coaching when it's not actually coaching. But I just really think that a lot of the industry has normalized this attitude of not asking questions, not pushing back, and just letting the coach kind of dictate the entire relationship. So those were my immediate thoughts. Of course, I also thought it would be helpful for us to go to Reddit and ask what people were thinking just to see if there was anything that I didn't already think of. So my original post read, "Hi all, I'm working on a YouTube video discussing behaviors in the coaching industry, specifically the scammy boss business babe side of the coaching industry, that are normalized if you're in the industry, but you actually realize aren't really that normal outside of the industry. Things like obsessing with bragging about your income, glorifying spending lots of money or going into debt to invest in yourself, pressure to idolize your coach or big players in the industry. Can you think of any specific behaviors that you had normalized when you were in it and later came to realize weren't normal at all? Thanks in advance for your insight." So I received over 50 responses to that post, which was super helpful. And I'm not going to read every single one of them on here. I will link the thread in the description down below if you want to go and comb through it yourself. However, I did want to read this one particular response because I think it touches on a ton of different things that I absolutely agree with. So this response is from from Resident Growth 941, and it says, the notion that being aligned, wanting it bad enough, or using law of attraction is what brings in money. Great point. The idea that if you're not aligned, don't want it bad enough, or aren't using law of attraction, or are self-sabotaging are all reasons you're not making money. Self-sabotaging being a reason for any number of bad things happening to a person being coached. A big one is that a lot of these folks act as if they alone are making enough money to cover their monetary needs, when many successful coaches have a partner who also makes money or is often supporting them or used to support them. The idea that there's a blueprint for success, marketing, growing a practice, etc., that anyone could follow and have the same outcome as whomever created said blueprint, that's one we talk about a lot on the channel. Other than in MLMs, multi-level marketing, there are very few industries who claim they are not MLMs and are actually very much like MLMs. I talked about this in Coachmas Day 1 in case you missed it. The number of people who train to be a coach and then quickly exit the industry after training, you don't see that in many other industries. Also very true. Raise your hand if you have a life coach certification collecting dust somewhere on your computer, in your closet, wherever it may be. Guilty. Needing to announce your political beliefs and stand up against all things, and if you don't, then you don't care enough and should be low-key canceled or called out. And don't hate me for this, it's important in many situations for businesses to state what they stand for, but in the girl boss coaching, there's a white lady level of concern about things that seem completely inauthentic and performative, often making a mockery of the true issue they are crying about because they are only worried about said issue once it has become popular to worry about it. You don't see other professional people having to publicly comment on everything in the news or have an official stance on it. It does a disservice to the universe and the other girl bosses to be doing this. Now, this is a really controversial one, I would say, and it's something that I spend a lot of time thinking about just because I am a content creator. I do have a public platform, and I have always found it super interesting when audiences demand their creator, the influencer, whoever they're watching, to have a public facing stance on absolutely every political issue. I just think for me personally, if I'm trying to form an opinion on a specific political situation that's happening, I'm probably not looking to my favorite influencers, my favorite content creators for that information in order to form my own opinion, nor do I really want them to share an uninformed opinion because I think that that can be super dangerous. So I kind of agree with this in the sense that, like, I don't think that every coach or influencer or content creator or public figure needs to publicly speak out against like every single issue that presents itself or that's trending, because I do think sometimes it is really performative and can actually end up doing more harm than good. Being transparent about income, well, it seems like it's a weird power flex and humble brag if one is making over 6 figures. Someone making less usually doesn't announce their transparency. It's only top earners. This is very, very true. I don't think I've ever seen a coach be like,
I just made my first $20,000 year in coaching.
it's always 6 figures or more, otherwise nobody cares. Normalizing sky-high pricing for an unregulated industry. I just did a video on this on day 3 here in the Coachmas series, so I will make sure to link that in case you missed it. Shaming others for not making said sky-high rates. See, not wanting it bad enough. Very true. Claiming to be one thing, aka helping people with their mental health or offering growth or offering people to step into their power, when in fact, most of the girl boss game is not really about those things, and there is a rampant use of manipulation in various forms with clients and a power struggle going on constantly. Also very true. Needing no actual certification, degree, or life experience to do the work. And don't hate at me for this stuff. I know there are tons of people doing good work in the space, but the question here is what's considered normal in the girl boss world, and I feel all these things fall into that. I will say for the most part, I absolutely agree with all of these points made, and like I say in all of my content, it's not about all coaching. It's about the girl boss, business babe, toxic, coaches coaching coaches kind of BS that we see spewed all over the internet. This list is all things that we have seen, and especially if you've been someone that's been in the industry, you've seen it normalized likely, and if you're not aware that it's not normal, you can very quickly end up in a place where you just kind of like blindly follow whatever you're being told and take it at face value. So I'm really just wanting to encourage critical thinking with these conversations. Now, there were a lot of other really great points made. A few posts were about how there's this perception that your income always needs to be like exponentially growing, particularly in the coaching industry. The concept that I've talked about at length on this channel of not being transparent about your pricing and essentially forcing people to get on a sales call with you before you'll tell them how much your program costs. The idea of using your private conversations with people in order to promote your programs, like screenshotting convos and using them as testimonials without people's consent. And then my personal favorite, which was this response from Lattes and Croissants, it says, connecting anything that happens in your daily life to your business somehow, even if it's far-fetched, and turning that into a sales pitch at the end. Now, I have definitely seen this in coaching, but I've also seen it on LinkedIn. There was a post that went viral a few months ago. I will pop it on the screen here. Something about an engagement and what it taught the guy about B2B sales. Whether or not that was a joke, I think that there is sort of this idea, and I see it with coaches and I see it with influencers, of having to share every single private detail of your life and somehow relate it back to your business. Super interesting to me. As always, please let me know in the comments anything you think I missed here. The more you start to notice these things, I think the harder it is to unsee them. I will see you tomorrow for Coachmas Day 8. So take care, comb your hair, and I'll be sure to leave you on screen here with the rest of the playlist. Bye!